Hello everyone, Shintobean here playing some Age of Empires 4. Now this is a game that I have only played for a little bit, and I played Age of Empires 2 like decades ago, but never really got any good at it, or certainly not good enough to actually understand how to play well at all. I was more of a StarCraft player. That's the one real-time strategy game that I played for many years. But yeah, Age of Empires, it's definitely a whole nother beast. Very complex game, and a lot of emphasis on building, well, city building, advancing technologies. There's just so many different upgrades, and building up an economy. But yeah, I really like about the thing I really like about Age of Empires 4, which is I think different from previous installments, is just how different each civilization is. In Age of Empires 2, it seemed like almost every faction was almost exactly the same, just all the same buildings, upgrades, and units, except for maybe a couple unique things. But here, they've really made all of the factions very asymmetrical. They have very different play styles. Like here, I'm playing as the Mongols. They don't even have like farms like the other factions do. They get all of their food from harvesting sheep, and then their buildings can be packed up and moved around. So that's very different. They also, unsurprisingly, have a very strong cavalry. This is my opponent's base, and he is playing as the Holy Roman Empire, which I am not actually very familiar with. And you can see he's got farms around his town center. And yeah, I still have a lot to learn about each faction. I think each faction has at least like 15 different things, ranging from, differences in upgrades, military units, and just the economy, like which types of resources they specialize in. Those all make each faction unique and feel very different to play as. So it's a lot of fun learning each faction, and certainly gives a lot of variety to the game. So this is actually only my second multiplayer game ever here. Prior to this, I'd only been playing against the AI, but I found out that you can actually observe other players, and so that's what kind of got me into multiplayer, just seeing how other players play, which is a really good way to just learn how the game works. Like prior to this, in my games, I was only building like one of each military production building, like one stable, one barracks, one archery range. But then I watched this crazy 3v3 battle, and some of the players were clearly veterans who knew what they were doing. But yeah, they just had such a massive economy that they were able to build like 15 to 20 military production buildings, and so they're making this massive army. I didn't even realize that was possible in this game, but it inspired me to try to take things to the next level. It takes a very high level of skill to play, and even when you know what you're supposed to do, there's a big difference between knowing what to do and then actually executing it. You can see here I've got just a little raiding party of horsemen. I was trying to scout out his territory. In this replay I have the entire map revealed here, but at this point in the game I didn't really know what my opponent had. Didn't know how much he had expanded, which it turns out my opponent, very similar to my base here, had not really expanded at all. However, my opponent you can see he's harvesting stone, which I actually did not harvest a single stone in this entire match. But I guess stone is used for like defensive structures, and you can see those little towers cropping up in my opponent's base. So yeah, he really focused on turtling and protecting his territory. You can see he has a little party here of spearmen with a little, I think they're called prelates, kind of a monk religious unit who can pick up these holy relics and then bring them back to generate gold, I think. I just, by chance, ran into them with my horsemen who were coming back and managed to engage them. This was kind of the first real engagement here, and it was a pretty big victory for me, I think. Taking out those spearmen, I realized pretty early on that going cavalry, which is, the strong point of the Mongols, would not really work out so well, because the first melee unit that you can build in this game are spearmen, which counter cavalry pretty hard. And you'll find that this game is a lot like rock, paper, scissors in that there are hard counters to like pretty much everything. So like spears, of course, will just destroy cavalry. Cavalry are quite good against archers. And then you've got the man-at-arms, which actually don't really see in this match at all. Man-at-arms is really good at killing spearmen. He's got, these towers here, though, which he kept upgrading, you know, so at the beginning they're just like archer towers, but then you can upgrade them with like these ballistas, and then you can then upgrade those to cannon towers, which he does eventually. So he's got all these defenses around here, making it very hard for me to actually, you know, break through with anything. And he's got knights as well. Those guys are pretty heavily armored. So I've got a much bigger army. Now, if you look at the top center, you can see the amount of workers and military units I have. So at the top, those are the number of workers I have. 61 workers to his 34. So my economy is in pretty good shape, I'd say. Just harvesting all those sheep. I got over 800 food per minute. About 1,000 wood per minute. I'm just harvesting lots of wood there. My opponent, on the other hand, you can see he's adding on a lot of farms, so he's getting quite a bit of food now, but not so much wood. Decent amount of gold, and he only has 27 military units compared to my 72, so I have a pretty big army. I've started adding on some siege engines. We've got battering rams coming in, which I assumed I would need to take down his towers. So I was trying to just counter what my opponent had on the field. I added on, I think I started adding on some crossbows at this point, which have armor-piercing bolts, which are better against like his knights. I've got plenty of spearmen. The archers are pretty weak. They don't actually really counter anything my opponent has. But at this point I start moving out with this army, nearly 100 strong. And so I have like triple. This army is like triple the size of my opponent's army, so you would think here that I would just be able to overrun my opponent, but I mean, he's got 4 towers there, and it turns out those towers are just really good. I think I got the first sight of his knights there, and I couldn't actually see all of them. Not all of them are visible, so I thought that he maybe had a much bigger army than myself. I didn't realize how vastly I outnumbered him. I guess in hindsight, I'm not sure how the battle would have gone if I just charged in with everything, but it's a little tricky. I was trying to arrange my units here, so I have the spears in front, backed by the archers, then we got the battering rams. You know, if you just select everything, then it puts them in a certain order, like the battering rams will go in front, and obviously you don't want those getting chopped up by his, cavalry. So, and the choke point there is pretty tight too. You know, you've got like the cliffs and then the trees there. So you just sort of have to funnel through that area, and it was kind of difficult to figure out how to actually get through that. So anyway, I decided to try to come in from the rear with this massive army of cavalry here. Got horse archers, but it turns out my opponent spotted those pretty quick. He actually, his cannon tower picked a few of them off, and then he came back with his knights. So those cavalry there, unable to actually do anything, make any sort of flanking maneuver on his base. Although if they had gotten around the back there, it looks like the very back of his base doesn't really have any towers protecting him, unlike the front, which is very heavily fortified. At this point, my opponent starts making a push of his own. He picks off those poor crossbowmen there, and he's got a lot of knights, a lot of spears, so just with these guys, if they had charged against my knights, my horsemen, they probably would have done really well, but here that was actually a pretty bad engagement of his. He charged a bunch of his knights right into my spearmen, and then I just charged. We chased him all the way back to his base, which maybe, I guess he was trying to bait me here, and if he was that, well, he succeeded, because I kind of wasn't paying attention. Pretty much all of my cavalry that just charged in within range of his towers, and I just lost nearly all of my horsemen there. And I came in with the rest of the army, but then it just looked like it was not going very well. Lost a lot of units, and then, you know, he's still got all these towers protecting his army. So, yeah, it's pretty tricky, even with the battering rams. I mean, obviously the battering rams have to be able to get past his army to actually do anything. And then he comes in again. I guess he thought that he killed enough of my army that he could make a big push here, but then I come back here. I have all these archers, crossbowmen, and spears, so we're just chasing him all the way back, and it's just a repeat. We're just raining arrows on him, on their retreating force, but then now he has mobile cannons here. Yeah, these cannons are just dealing a lot of damage, picking off my guys there. And so I'm like, okay, time to retreat again. And I have this gigantic trebuchet, which is actually a unique unit. I didn't actually build it myself. It was made by this palace here, which just spawns random, like, elite military units for free, which is pretty cool. It's a, I think, Imperial Age landmark. So yeah, I finally advanced to Age 4. I'm maxed out actually at the moment. I have the maximum number of units, so 79 workers. And at this point I get the bright idea, you know, maybe I should just send this hit squad of battering rams back behind his base to try to hit him from the rear. Meanwhile, his whole army is coming up here. He's got multiple cannons, tons of knights. I've got my big trebuchet there. I've got the little battering rams are coming in. And actually, those battering rams could have just gotten devastated by his cavalry, but by sheer luck, you know, I mean, I guess I timed it so that my big army here, this is the first really huge engagement between both armies, and I'm slowing down to see it in real time, this battle take place here. So he's got several cannons, but what also looks like some undeployed trebuchets there. His cavalry came into the back to try to take out my archers, which could have been devastating, but I did redirect some units to sort of block them off. But yeah, he's got his towers firing at me. I do have my battering rams coming in, and battering rams deal crazy damage to buildings. They're also pretty much impervious to ranged attacks, so his towers are really ineffective at doing anything. He did kill almost all of my melee units. I have a bunch of archers here firing fire arrows, but those do like almost nothing to his siege engines. And then he's got some knights in here who are also really good against archers, so they're just taking those guys out. I think one of the things that both me and my opponent found here was the difficulty of microing units on two fronts. Most of our attention was going to this skirmish at the front of his base. That I kind of forgot about the battering rams. Now I had told them to sort of attack move into his base, so here battering rams, it doesn't look like they're doing very much, but they're actually attacking the farms, which are these little fields on the ground. And battering rams are again very effective against buildings, including those fields. And then I've just got this trebuchet here, firing away. By this time, I've lost most of the units in my attacking force, but my opponent also only has 6 military units, 5 now at this point, to my 34, and a lot of my guys are just sitting at the base. We've got these battering rams coming in, just destroying his base. He's not actually sending any of his combat units to attack the battering rams. I've still got units just trickling in, getting picked off by those cannons. And he actually did a really good job of defending his entrance, but I guess he was so busy with that he wasn't able to deal with these battering rams, which, again, they're just not taking like any damage from the towers. But at this point, I've got 3 rams just sitting there next to the ruins of the landmark they destroyed. I forgot to redirect them. And finally, he gets his villagers to start throwing torches at him. And so, again, I'm still kind of busy up here at the front, dealing with these knights and whatnot. Yeah, I just completely forget about the battering rams, so they end up getting destroyed by the villagers. But again, if I had actually moved them forward to attack, they could have leveled pretty much his entire base, I think, in the time that this battle was taking place. As it is, though, his several units, I mean, he only has a couple units here, but they managed to take down all my archers up here. And he's got a little cannon there. It's a small cannon, but I believe that cannon actually does a lot of damage to siege engines in particular. So you can see that trebuchet just gets blasted. by those cannonballs. Got my big trebuchet there, don't want to lose that one. Really valuable unit, so I pull off the attack, finally just issue a full retreat there. And yeah, this is my base. I guess I was so busy microing that I wasn't really building a whole lot of units at the same time, so there's kind of a lull in the battle here. I do have a booming economy. You can see I have way too many resources, over 10,000 food, just a ridiculous amount. I'm not harvesting any wood at the moment. Looks like we just completely chopped down a forest, and I guess a bunch of my workers are doing who knows what. I am starting to harvest more gold, just traveling around, and he's rebuilding his landmarks here. These were the ones that just got destroyed. My opponent also is harvesting a whopping 0 wood per minute. So yeah, he's just using all his workers to rebuild those landmarks. It's actually one of the win conditions in this game is if you destroy all the landmarks, you just automatically win. You can also win by controlling all the religious sites for a certain amount of time, or building a wonder and then defending it for a large amount of time, but those are rather difficult to attain, and I was just focused on building up an army than just trying to level his base. My opponent was just so focused on defense this whole game that he never really attacked my base. You can see there, I just spawned like a bunch of these elite infantry units from that palace. That thing is amazing, just spawning those units for free. So just a couple minutes later, I'm already almost up to 70 military units, and I've got workers strip mining this gold mine here on the other side of the map. And I started adding these little ballista things, which I believe deal extra damage to siege engines. I wanted to use those to take down his cannon. I guess he only has one cannon. I didn't know that again. Again, Fog of War was on in this match. And that's why I was playing so cautiously and so hesitant to actually commit to a large battle. I just didn't know what all he had, and you know, every time I got a glimpse of his army, it looked a lot bigger than it actually was. Like looking at it here, he's got really not a whole lot, and yet he was still able to build a gigantic keep there at his entrance. I guess that is what stone is used for. You can see here, I still have not harvested any stone whatsoever. I've got units trickling in here, they just keep getting baited by their ranged attacks, but then I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's just send in the battering rams, and then, you know, why not just send in the whole entire army? I do have the trebuchet firing from all the way off the screen. The range on that thing is just absurd. And then I come in with the rest of the forces. They charge in. They are just wiping out everything. We've got lots of archers and handgunners now. Finally take out that cannon, and then his knights come in, and then slowing it down back to real time. Those knights make a valiant charge, but they are just vastly outnumbered. I've got all these elite soldiers. I've got tons of crossbows, and then the ballistas are all firing at them, so they just get mowed down. And now at this point, my opponent, he has 2 workers and 1, well, now 3 military units, but yeah, I've got my soldiers running amok through his base, and at this point, he just surrenders. And that is the game. So it was pretty intense, and it was like a 45-minute game. We were watching most of this at 8 times the regular speed. But yeah, that is the game for you. Let me know if you'd like to see more of these. I mean, it's quite a fun game. I really enjoy it. But yeah, I still got a lot to learn. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.